I fully ran into the biggest mistake that you could do, thinking you know better than your customers and not doing any kind of research on that.
And now we're translating to 18 languages without a single human translator.
Germans don't know how to build software.
The product broke with a 3 decades old paradigm, the paradigm of Photoshop.
Oh my God, Dios mío, this is, oh my God, Dios mío.
Welcome back to Hotfix. I'm Christoph, here with my co-host Stefan. Our guest today is Alex Ciorapciu. Alex is currently Director International at Bol. Before that, he was VP Product at TradeByte. Alex has a lot of experience in building products for e-commerce. He also founded AutoRetouch, an AI-based image editing startup, which he successfully exited. In this episode, we will talk about the current AI hype, big usability challenges he had with AutoRetouch, and why Germany does not have the best cultural foundations for building software. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Christoph and Stefan.
So you have been very, very deep and very involved with AI for the last 12 years. And now I think for the last, 2 or 3 years, there has been a lot going on. And I just wanted to understand, how are you seeing how AI is currently evolving, what is happening today, and all the craziness going on?
Well, there are several ways to look at that, right? On the one hand, after being involved with the topic for well over a decade, I'm sort of glad to be having conversations where the counterparts does not perceive AI to be Skynet and taking over the world. Although these fears are arising again, but from a different perspective. It's a whole another topic. Generally, I'm glad to see AI being in mainstream, being talked about, being considered by product teams around the world. On the other hand, as it so often happens with quite complex technology that become mainstream, become overhyped, management, investors are pushing for these technologies to be adopted without truly understanding what it really means. So what I notice way too often in the past 2 years is people in various functions trying to push AI for the sake of AI. So they don't look at the benefits that you can derive from AI. What they have in mind is, I have an investor update to give, and my investor is asking me, what's your AI strategy? So I can say, this is my AI strategy, box check, done. And this is way too simple. It's sort of a pity because it doesn't lead to the results that can be obtained from AI. Perhaps one example that struck me recently, I was shopping for an electrical toothbrush, one that rotates and really gives you clean teeth. There was this brand that everyone knows that is recommended by 20 out of 10 dentists, and they are advertising their toothbrushes to be powered by artificial intelligence. I said, wow, let me have a closer look at that. And I really tried to figure out what kind of models might be running on these small devices. I mean, it is possible to do that. The question is, why would you do that? Why would you build sensors that are hundreds of dollars in cost? Why would you do that if you can get 99% of the results purely by coding in the programs? I'm sure I would get hate mail from the guy that invented that. Apologies.
And I think it's fine if you get hate mail for that, because I think you have a very good point. I think so. I think it's fair to say that. But I want to be devil's advocate with you for now, because I think usually I'm always of this notion there needs to be a problem, and then I look at which technology can solve this problem, right? And I think it should be applied like this with AI as well, right? There is a problem I can solve with conventional like coding. Should I use like a machine learning model to solve this problem? If yes, this is possible, or if there is a model that can do this. But I think AI is different in a sense that suddenly we can solve problems that we couldn't solve 5 years ago, we didn't even think about solving these problems. So I think many times, at least for me, when I look at different machine learning models, it helped me to actually identify problems that I didn't see before, because before it was just reality for me. And suddenly I saw, there's technology that can actually make this much, much better. So I think sometimes, yes, people are going way overboard. Probably you shouldn't build an AI toothbrush. But do you think that there is a space in AI where you start with the technology and arrive at the problems that you can now solve with this new technology?
It's a very interesting question. Let me give you an example where what you just said is outlined. So think of product recommendations. People that have bought this also bought, that you see on Amazon. This is, let's say, the best, earliest example of early stage machine learning models that we had. It's a company I used to work for, which back in the heyday in 2012, when I went to customers, they always said they knew much better what goes together with a product. And then what I used to do is I used to pull up Amazon and ask them, so here is a digital scale of Deutsche Briefwaage where you weigh the weight of the letters. So what would you recommend to that? And the answers always come, well, have an envelope, have a pen, have other things from the office, perhaps a letter opener. But then I showed them the results of Amazon, and this is still true today. You can still do the trick. You will see envelopes and you will see letter openers, but you will also see small plastic bags, and you will see the shovel from Duplo, where you get about a gram of whatever you have on that to put in that little plastic bag. And that is something that is intrinsic in the data. It's just like when you look for a baseball bat on Amazon, you will see 100 baseball bats, and then you will see a ski mask, and you will see a knife. These are connections that are deep in the data. That's what you meant earlier, that there is way more to it than you can imagine, because no one imagined that. I did not imagine before. A colleague showed me that example that I could bring to the customers. So yes, there are these cases, but I think we still have way lower hanging fruits to grasp, things that are easier to improve on than to throw machine learning at it. The other, let's say, difficulty I have with that is, on the one hand, I do love the technology. I find it immensely interesting, but I also know what is required to actually get this off the ground, make a real product out of that. And most companies are not equipped with that. They don't have the infrastructure, maybe from an organizational point of view, maybe from a technological, from an architectural point of view. They are not equipped to deliver that in a meaningful time frame. And what happens then is a negative stigma, because you will not get the results. And then someone will say, oh, look at that AI shit. Ain't working, huh?
Alex, because I would actually say that in my professional career, I think it's the second AI hype that I'm experiencing. I think there has been a similar one around 2018 to 2020, especially with these machine learning capabilities that were becoming more powerful back then. So for also the example that you mentioned with recommendation engines. And I have the feeling that I think it's particularly applicable for Europe, that people are still spoiled from that time. I think there was a lot of fraud, maybe you can call it like that, happening, where companies were saying we are AI companies, even though they didn't do any AI. Maybe it was something not even close to AI. But I have the feeling that it's different right now. I think it's far easier to use the current technology that came up 2 years ago to solve real life problems. We also have the feeling that people particularly in Europe are still spoiled from the time back then.
I don't know if I would call it spoiled, but I do understand what you mean. So to also highlight and underscore what you just said, when I was working for AutoRetouch, which was an AI image editing company where you throw your image in and 20 seconds afterwards you get the result. We were facing numerous competitors that popped out of nowhere who guaranteed perfect images in a time frame of 24 hours. Now, an AI does not need 24 hours to get it done. So there was definitely not AI in the background. Having said that, you are also right in the sense that nowadays the groundwork is way higher. So it's way easier to get a Llama model, run it on your own cloud instance, and get something done. Yes. With regards to Europe, there is, as it has always been, way too much skepticism, way too many questions asked, and just it's all very slow. It's not that American mindset, okay, let's run with it and see where it takes us. And then we will draw a line underneath and see if it was good. Here in Europe, and especially in Germany, we think for 5 years, and then we tend to see the world has turned 55 times in the last 5 years. It's not really relevant anymore.
I think many times it was. But so to maybe put a little bit of a cut to the AI discussion, even though I love it, I think you touched on AutoRetouch, and we actually want to hear a little bit more about that as well. So because before that you shared with us, and this is now the main part of the session today, is this failure story, right? Want to learn a little bit about a failure in your past. And you mentioned that with AutoRetouch, you made some experiences with usability, and how usability can be a tough point, and how usability can be very important, and what happens if you get it wrong in the beginning. And so it would be amazing if you can take us through what happened and how you react to this situation.
All right. So for everyone to understand that, I have to go a bit back in time. And there was a time when I was working at Bräuninger. I was leading the data science department there. Bräuninger, for everyone that doesn't know, is a luxury fashion retailer in Germany. This is where you go to buy Prada, Gucci, and all of the other high-end luxury fashion clothing items. So we were doing various machine learning projects that are quite natural to the e-commerce space, like price optimization, stock optimization, things that you would expect. But as you noted in my introduction, I started my career at Adobe. 15 years ago, I was going out to customers and teaching them about Photoshop and Lightroom workflows in the photo studio. So I knew how image editing is being done also in product photography. And when I started at Groninger, I was very curious to see what had actually changed in the last 15 years. Turns out, basically nothing. It was still the same old process: shoot, tether to Lightroom, then do 1-2 quick edits, and then send it off to the image editor. That is another company, accompanied by a PDF style guide, how they should retouch the images, FTP, uploads, downloads, come back. So I thought, well, you're now 15 years wiser. You've seen machine learning. It was also the rise. So think about the time frame was 2017 when this started. It was the rise of GPUs. It was the rise of open source models out there. So these were things we could grab. We had an immense amount of training data that was not publicly available. From the inside, Bräuninger was shooting 500,000 images back then. So we could train a model that no one else could train because no one had access to that. So what I envisioned was a system that allowed you to parameterize the various operations that are being done in a typical product image retouching operation. You remove the background, you do a skin retouch, you set it on a master, position it in the layout, you generate some shadows, you do perhaps a bit of recoloring, things like that. So the number of operations is relatively contained, and the number of parameters are also not going crazy. But each one in itself is a task that cannot be coded. All of these have to be learned by machine learning models. To remove the background, you have to differentiate pixel by pixel. Are you foreground? Are you background? And if you want to do it really well, you have to know the opacity of each pixel. If you want to do a kin retouch, you first have to recognize what is skin. So you apply all of the modifications only on the skin. You got to learn things like eyes and teeth and nostrils are skin. So you have to train your own models. So we did that in our own department. And then we went to the post-production and said, hey guys, how about you give us 100 images? So they gave us 100 images. We ran them through our model and took the results from the external company, took our results, presented it to them and said, do you notice any difference? And the result of the test was they didn't notice any significant difference. And they had no idea what we had done to that, but they didn't notice any difference, which was the proof that we needed. Hey, we can do it cheaper and faster than the external company. So the external company was doing it manually,
Okay.
like in the 2 decades before.
Mhm.
So with that, we developed a system inside of Bräuninger that we operated, that we parameterized, and the post-production just put the images on an FTP, we grabbed them and we put them back. All right, so now that you get what AutoRetouch was, let's fast forward a bit. We launched a company together with our company Bräuninger. They were our investor. And we wanted to offer this product to all of the brands and retailers out there. So I had the privilege to lead this startup as a CEO and the main product guy. And I fully ran into the biggest mistake that you could do, thinking you know better than your customers and not doing any kind of research on that. So what happened was we just took our software and placed it on our website. You could go to autoretouch.com and you landed straight into the workflow builder where you could configure the workflow as you wanted. You could drag and drop components, move them around, and play with the parameters. So we had it live in no time, thanks to my magnificent crew of people that I would like to call out at this early stage. It was Till, Silvana, Oli, and Julian that started on this journey with me. And we very quickly had this live. And then when the first people came onto our website, nothing happened. I mean, we could see it in our logs that no end result was being processed. And we simply didn't understand that. Then to pour some gasoline on the fire, I took a couple €1,000 and put it into Google Ads. So we had more people on our website, and still nothing happened. And I was completely perplexed. I didn't understand why these guys don't get any results. So at this point, someone told me, hey, how about you install software like Hotjar so you can actually record the session and see what these guys are doing. We did that. And to this day, I remember the physical pain I experienced when I saw our customers, our first customers, or visitors rather, trying to use the product. They simply did not understand what was out there. It was just too much for them. They absolutely didn't get the sense of the product. They didn't understand why it was there, what it was for, how to use it. It was just a complete pain to watch. And now let's get into a discussion.
Amazing. So just to quickly summarize, at that time you were working at one of the largest e-com players in Germany. You were leading the data science team and you invented a model or a product that was capable of automating a process that was previously done manually for many years. And that process was image editing, which usually goes through a couple of predefined steps.
Correct.
This worked internally. So you had proof that this was exactly doing what the manual process was doing before. And then you tried to open up this product to also other players on the market. And I think the interesting part here is that you had validations that the problem is there. You also had validation that it works for users in your company, but it didn't have the validation for the users outside of your company. And that seemed to be the problem there, right?
Very correct. Instead of running up, we, the team, handled everything. For the customer, it was an exchange as it was previously. They put files on an FTP, downloaded them from an FTP. We handled all the rest. Now, because product led, we brought the product in front of the customer, and suddenly the customer had to use and configure it by itself. To add to the difficulty and complexity of that was the product broke with a 3 decades old paradigm, the paradigm of Photoshop. And that is image by image, click by click. This is how Photoshop works. AutoRetouch works in a different way. Goes define once, execute multiple. So you define one workflow. This is how all of my images that I'm going to hit this workflow with are going to be processed. And then you hit it with 1 million images. And that was something that a software person easily understands, but someone that is working in the industry of image retouching and is actually doing the retouching usually doesn't understand that. They cannot grasp this scalability of a software system.
And when you launch, and you gave the product to people, which part do you think did they not understand? So when they got in front of your product, where did they fail? Why couldn't they produce a result?
It was for several reasons. The first reason that comes to my mind is they didn't understand the drag and drop concept. So you have to imagine you have a blank canvas, and on this canvas, you are drawing a process. So everyone that has worked in a business process software knows that. Everyone that has worked in sound or 3D knows how to connect various components to one another and how things flow through a system. And they are used to this drag and dropping and positioning. People in image retouching didn't know that concepts back then. So this is the first thing where we failed. The other thing where we failed was we addressed the wrong people. We went for the guys that did the image retouching. And for these guys, we either scared the life out of them because they realized, hey, this is going to replace me, or they didn't understand what it was meant to do. So we addressed completely the wrong people. The other thing was we put it out in front of the people without any instructions. I mean, we were already using the system for well over a year. To us, it was second nature. And we tried to make it as absolutely easy as possible to get started. At the same time, when we went live, there was a competitor from Austria, the company called Remove BG, that was doing something similar to us. They were removing the background of an image. And if you remember how that website looked back then, you had a drag and drop window. You could drag and drop your file on there, and then the file got processed and was ready, and you're done. That was all. And I wanted the same simplicity, but I neglected that my product was inherently more complex than just one single operation. For us, there were so many more operations, and you had to create a workflow first and then it would do something. And that we did not explain to our users.
I would like to touch on one specific thing you just mentioned, that is scaring the users that your product may replace them. And what I would like to understand from here, I have the feeling that many of the AI products that are currently being launched are doing that. So there's many products that are replacing the function that is starting to use these products. And I think many companies now have this problem that they are somewhere in between, should we actually do this, or do we actually scare our own users that to use this product? So I think this is a huge dilemma that we have in the industry right now. What would be your advice as someone that has experienced this in the past?
Put the customer first. Absolutely, no doubt, no second thought on that. Take away the AI. The user should not care whether it's AI or not. AI is a technology. Take it from the product point of view. See if you deliver the value that you promise to your user. If you accomplish that, you win. And do whatever is necessary to deliver this value. And if the user doesn't understand that, do what is necessary.
And maybe to add this, because I think one argument I hear very often to this is that we just make people more efficient, right? We're not replacing them, we're just making them more efficient, right? But if you think about, there is a function and you have 10 people working in this function, and suddenly one person can do what before 5 people did in a week, you are replacing people, right? Because then you need 2 people for the same amount of work you needed 10 people on before. So I think even if you solve their problem and you make them more efficient, there is still this risk, no, that we are actually replacing the users of our own product.
Stefan, can you think of a single practical example where a whole function was already rationalized away from AI?
Yes. I have one very concrete one, because we did this at the company that we worked at. So what we did is we translated our product into 18 languages. And we had translating freelancers working on it, with people working on it to translate. Like whenever we built a new functionality in the product, we had it translated in 18 languages, and they then wrote us an invoice, and then we shipped the product. And now with we use a product called Localize, and Localize released a feature called Localized AI, and it simply does the same thing our translators did, but like we just added our keys that we did before, and we used Localize to actually give tasks to our translators. And then they could do these translation tasks, give it back to us. With Localize AI, Localize actually finishes the translation task, and we didn't need the translator anymore. And now we're translating to 18 languages without a single human translator. And this effectively rationalized away 18 people. I mean, a part of their work, right? They were freelancers, they work with other companies. But if these other companies do the same thing we did, I think they have troubles like doing their job or enough of their job to actually make a living. So I do believe there is functions like these that disappear.
I can only agree to that. So that's the thing, that we make people more efficient is to a little degree true. And I myself was running around 10 years ago and explaining the advantages of machine learning in whatever process is that you can focus on other tasks that you can do that the machine cannot do. But to be very frank, after many, many projects that I've done in that area, I lost the belief that people actually are capable of doing other stuff. So it sounds very cruel, but the people that are doing, I don't know, some kind of optimization by themselves in Excel, if you take that away from them, after having done that for the past 10 years, they will not become entrepreneurs. They will not become innovators. You take it away from them, what they used to do for a living, and they will not be more efficient. In the boardrooms of each major company, the discussion is not how can we make our people more efficient for the sake of making them efficient. It is also how much cost can we cut. And for AutoRetouch, we discussed it openly. We said our software is going to kill around 200,000 jobs worldwide. And people in Bangladesh and India woke up one day and were not needed anymore because their customers were using a software like AutoRetouch. And that is the reality.
And
it will affect many, many more sectors. And especially the people working in these sectors, they don't see the blow coming. They will wake up one day and it'll be gone.
Yes, and one thing I think you mentioned that is so important is this high degree of specialization we have in the workforce, right? People are highly specialized to do a thing very good. And then if you take this one thing away that they are highly specialized in, it is really, really, really tough to transition to something else. I think there's a good amount of jobs where it's not as hard, right? If you are in product or in customer success or any of like these more fluffy jobs, it is very easy to transition to another fluffy jobs and then do sales or do, I don't know, some kind of customer work instead of product or whatever, right? There is an easy way to transition there. But if you are hyper specialized and you do a technical task very good today, and then this technical task can be like automated away with AI, it is very tough to just do something else. I think you're very right with that. And I think this is something that we also need to be aware of when we build these kinds of products, right? That we are not just making people more efficient, that we are actually changing industries. But I think maybe to some degree, we need to be fine with it, because I think it wouldn't be good for humanity if we didn't have fridges. Because I don't know, in 1900, we had pity with people delivering ice to people's homes, right? I think this is just it's not a great way to think about things, right? It's obvious, yes, they couldn't deliver ice anymore and we suddenly had fridges. I think it's good that we have fridges today. So I think maybe for all of us, it's not that bad that we innovate radically. But I think in like 10 to 20 years, there will be tough periods until then where a lot of people suddenly will lose their jobs that didn't expect it and they didn't know that, hey, I should learn other things, should upskill myself in other areas, because from one day to another, they're out of their job, right? I think this is a reality of this part of technology that we're in, and like in AI especially, it is replacing people.
Great. I think that's a topic where we could fill an entire episode with. I think there's a lot of points that we could still make there. The summary is, let's build fridges. So let's move on to the last section of the podcast, which is our provocative thoughts corner. Alex, we already had a conversation before. There's an interesting sentence that you dropped, something that we already touched on in the beginning of the episode when we talked about Europe. Here's more specifically about Germany. And the sentence was that Germans don't know how to build software. Can you elaborate on that?
Adding to the pile of hate mail that I'm going to receive. Right.
Why do you think this way? What is it that Germans do worse than other nationalities?
I don't think it's that they do worse. I think it is because Germans do something extremely well, and that is building everlasting, reliable, perfect machines that they have, that the way to work is so dominated by the world in which you build physical machines that it's ingrained in every German. And of course, this is a blatant exaggeration, right? I'm just trying to make a larger point here. And they take the principles that have led them to success in the past 60 decades and try to apply them to software. And this is where everything breaks. A software product does not equal a hardware product. That's why they have different names. If you look in German companies, you can very easily spot this thinking. First of all, Germans want to know when is something finished, right? Which is absolutely natural. If you think of a brake pad for a car, at a certain point, you want to have a physical product that you can mount on your wheels and that will brake the car, and that will do so incredibly reliably, because if they fail, people will die and that causes pain, and you don't want that. But in software, if you're the product guy and tell them, be ready with what? I don't know. I just deliver value, and I continue to deliver value. And you get the question, well, when are you done? Photoshop is 33 years old, and it keeps improving every 6 months. Nowadays, whenever they want. And this is a complete different notion of how to approach work that is radically different from everything that has led this country's manufacturing hub to success and the justified success that it has. And at the same time, they are failing in software because they try to apply the same principles. And if anyone still has a doubt, look at the German car manufacturers these days. Look at the software from German automotive manufacturers.
Yeah.
I rest my case.
But one thing I do notice is that in my mind, it is changing. So I've now also spent, I don't know, the last over 10 years in like Austrian or German software companies. And I would say 10 years ago, I think most software companies also behaved like those traditional automotive or like industry companies. And I think what I mean, for example, I've also worked with many American companies. And the difference, I think like 10 years ago was that in Germany and Austria, there was this big obsession with bugs. Why is there still like this tiny bug and that tiny bug? And then in America, they're like, we don't care that there is this tiny bug or that tiny bug. It works well enough. People will be fine. And we don't need to fix every last meticulous detail about our product before we can actually ship it to customers. And Americans, they just ship it and then they hope it doesn't break and kill someone. Gladly, software doesn't do that very often, as you said, right? And then but I have the feeling that it's changing. I have the feeling that this, maybe the culture also in Europe is Americanizing. I don't know if this is the right term for it, that we are more happy to take risks. We are more happy to build software the way people do it in Silicon Valley or do it in, I don't know, London. You know what I mean? I feel like it is changing.
I feel like also, Stefan, could that maybe be because there's more and more companies from Germany and Austria serving international customers? I think one ritual where I'm also noticing these cultural nuances is with customer feedback calls. And if you have feedback calls with someone from Germany, there's often a lot of directness. They tell you very direct what they need and also have demands on when they need that. Whereas if you have a lot of international customers, this culture from your customers trickles into the company.
So to Stefan's earlier point, the culture changing, where I see it's changing is on the basis. The young people coming into the companies, they have a new mindset. It's way more Americanized, way more modern, where I don't really see any significant change is on the management level. So if you go from upper middle management to top management, if you look at Berlin, that has become a startup hub of continental Europe, and you have all of these very modern startups that have also a very international workforce that comes from all over Europe and the world. They are truly international companies. That is, to me, not a German company. There are the typical German companies that do their money by producing physical goods, and they will still do in the future, but they still need software. Recently, I attended a convention of manufacturing companies about AI. I was invited to be a speaker there. It was very different to the normal conventions I usually go to, where there are only software people or e-commerce, right? There were guys from medicine technology doing implants, agricultural guys, cable guys, all of these physical products. 2 talks before me, there was a talk about why it's better to have a digital workflow than a paper-based workflow.
Yeah, I think this is a great point, and I think maybe this is also the point we can take there, because I think you are very true. And I think it is a controversial thought. And I think it sounds very harsh, but I think there's just still a lot of work to do for us in Europe, right? Where we need to change, because obviously in other countries, you have not just software companies behaving like this. And now in software companies, like you say, in Berlin, we are adapting. We have a very internationalized workforce in those companies. We are becoming more agile. We are becoming more happy to take risks, more happy to go with it. But then in all other industries where there is also software used, and this is 99.9% of companies have software in use. And there we are probably still just, very rigid, very much focused on not breaking things and not focused on making things better or revolutionizing things, right? We just want to make sure that there is nothing bad happening rather than putting all our energy to making something good happen.
Well, I have another controversial thought, and that is that what I just said is not controversial anymore. Might have been perhaps a year ago, but if you look at the top industry of Germany, that's automotive, right? Look at what Volkswagen did. They tried to outsource all of the software into a different company, especially to prevent what happened from happening. Namely, they are slow, they don't get things done, and so on. But the mistake they did was they treated it as they would treat an internal department. Volkswagen ordered what they wanted from CARIAD. They gave requirements and they had to deliver. It hasn't worked out. Where has this led to? It led to CARIAD being almost shut down, and Volkswagen investing 5 billion euros in Rivian and XPeng. So this is where the value is generated elsewhere, outside of Germany. As you said, everything has software in it. No matter what industry you are in, you will have software. And that core capability of what is needed, everything associated with that, is not really present in the German company landscape.
I think what this shows is that Volkswagen doesn't consider building software as one of their necessary core competencies, right? I think they want to focus on building good cars and do not consider building software themselves helps them in building good cars. Maybe this also shows that...
where lies the value of the car? So, of course, you can be a car manufacturer like Magna in Graz in Austria that just builds cars. You're a coach builder then. Okay, fine. But is this what Volkswagen wants to be? I don't think so. We sort of drifted into automotive now. But it's very difficult to since 1 in 8 jobs is connected to the automotive industry in Germany, it's very good to illustrate the impact that the capability of producing high quality software has.
Yes. And you're very right? What drives the value of a car? Like right now for the second year, I think the Model Y was the most sold car in Europe. This didn't happen before. German cars were the most sold cars in Europe since ever. And this changed. And when I recently looked at cars and I decided for a Model Y in the end, and I did it because of the entertainment, the software I get. I didn't do it because of the transmission. There is no transmission in an electric car, but like for all the hardware parts within the car were not as much of a factor as the entire experience of this car, right? Like I do with software, right? So it's so interesting. And I think you're making a great point there that Volkswagen needs to understand, right? What drives value in a car? Is it just the car? Is it just excellence in steering and all these things like that are pure car? Or is there things that are now mixing into this pure car thought, right? I think this is very interesting.
You remember, Stefan, how you said a couple of minutes earlier that Germans are obsessed with eliminating bugs, whereas the Americans rather go for value, value, value. You can also see that in the Tesla quest. So in the beginning, German manufacturers laughed at the quality of the materials used in a Tesla. They ridiculed the gaps between the panels because to a German, this was completely unacceptable.
Mhm.
What they missed was the use case entertainment that you just brought.
Mhm.
And in other markets, I was recently talking to a guy from the automotive industry that is frequently in China. They use their cars to live in because their apartments are so small. So these people would go into a car to watch a movie because the seats are more comfortable, the air is cleaner, and the display and the sound is better. We don't have that here. But you have to approach it with a new mindset, and that's a product mindset that is also missing in here. Germans don't really have product managers. When they say product managers, what they mean is a project manager. Get it done to the requirements in time and with the budgets allocated. That's what we usually want.
And I think we just to find an ending here. I do think that you are very right, but I do think this is maybe not just in Germany. I think in most companies, there's product managers are often then just project managers with a fancy title and a nicer salary. So, but yeah, I think it's a very nice point. We are having a really, really good conversation, but it's already a very long conversation. So I think we can come to an end. Thanks so much for this conversation, Alex. It was really, really, really a pleasure to spend almost the last hour with you, discussing everything from AI to failing and now to how we can improve as European product builders. So to our listeners, I really hope that you enjoyed this conversation as well. Make sure to also review this episode, leave a like, leave a subscribe. And we are happy to be back next time with more conversations about product leadership and especially failures. And thanks so much for turning on Hotfix.